If you're looking at selling your investment property anywhere pretty much in Ontario, then this video is going to be great for you because I'm going to go over 5 things that you should look at before even listing the property, and then 2 different options that you can actually use when you are going to list it when you do have tenants in that property. And I'm going to share an experience towards the end where I have just recently gone through listing a property that was tenanted, which was not able to close on closing day, and we're getting into it right after this. Hey, what's going on? It's Brad Gates and I'm a local realtor here in the Greater Toronto area. If it's your first time watching any of my videos, be sure to like them as you are watching them, and then also subscribe to the channel. Liking the videos actually lets me know people are appreciating the information that I'm providing, but then it also helps YouTube with the algorithms and putting my videos in front of other people, just like yourself. This video is just about how you can sell your investment property, and you're going to limit the amount of risk that you're going to be involved, because when you are selling a tenanted property, it's not just as easy as giving notice and then closing on a property. There's much more that you should look at, and that's the purpose of this video. I have people reaching out who are looking to buy, sell, invest right here in the Greater Toronto area, and I absolutely love it. So if you're looking to move to or from or invest in the Greater Toronto area, be sure to call, text, email. You can send the carrier pigeon, whatever is easiest for you, and I'm here to make your move and relocation go so much easier. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Full disclosure, I'm not a paralegal, I'm not a lawyer, so this is just my practical advice and opinion on these things. It is recommended that you do consult with a lawyer, you do consult with a paralegal, and let them handle it, because they can do it properly. And when you do it properly, there's less loopholes for things to fall through the cracks, and that's what you want to avoid as well. So first, I'm going to start off with going over the 2 options that you pretty much have when you are going to sell your investment property. The first option would be buyer is to assume the current tenants that are there. That option is easier because you don't have to worry about providing vacant possession. The only thing that makes this tricky is if you are getting below market rent, then this is something that could actually deter buyers, because they're stuck with tenants that they're going to have to pretty much raise the rent, or they're not going to be able to do any of that other than the CPI increases, which makes it less attractive for potential buyers unless the property is being sold at a discounted price. Option 2 would be you provide vacant possession. And if that's the route you are going to go, then you're going to want to pay attention to these 5 things that you are going to want to look at, because if you don't, you might get yourself in a situation where you're not able to close because you're not able to provide the vacant possession. And if you follow this process, then it's limiting the amount of risk you have from having the tenants not leave. The first thing you're going to want to do is to review the lease. You want to make sure that the lease is either coming to an end or it's currently on month to month. You also want to make sure that there's no option for a lease renewal. Sometimes they will put the tenant has the right to renew for an additional 1 year. If that's the case, then you're going to have to wait for that 1 year to be up before you can actually provide vacant possession. If you are just having the buyer assume the tenants that are there, then that's something that you're going to want to let the buyer know. The second thing to know is you can't just evict because you are selling the property. It's not quite that easy. Sometimes landlords will give notice and the tenants will leave, but the landlord ends up helping them. And that's the case, then they leave, you're able to sell the property, and then you can move on. But if the tenant is not willing to leave, you're going to want to follow the steps that are coming to ensure that everything will go smoothly and that there's no option for being blindsided. Having the tenant leave mutually is a lot easier of a process. It will allow you to have an empty house to show. You can stage it, you can fix it up, like whatever you need to do to have the property show its best, because when you have a tenanted property, it's not your stuff, and the motivation for you to sell is for you. It's not necessarily coming from your tenant. So there's no guarantees that the place is going to be clean, that they're going to be cooperative with showings. You give notice, but at the end of the day, I've been on showings where the tenant just refused to let us in. It sucked. I let the agent know, but it was kind of like the hands were tied. You can go through the landlord-tenant board to ensure that they don't prevent showings and things like that, but it's just a headache. So the best way to do it is to have vacant possession, have the place empty, ready to go. You can pretty much show anytime. You don't need any notice for showings, and then you're able to just fully market the property to get the highest amount that you want, obviously, on offer day. So the third thing, you have listed the property and the tenants are staying, they've been cooperative during showings. You get an agreement of purchase and sale signed, accepted. Then from there, if the buyer is moving into the property, then you're going to want to make sure that they sign a declaration, and you have that declaration along with the agreement of purchase and sale. You also have an N12 that you actually file with the landlord-tenant board, and pretty much they have the 60 days notice. They've been on month to month. One thing to note is you might have to pay them, you will have to pay them 1 month's rent. That's just the way it works. You give 60 days notice, and then you're required to pay them 1 month's rent. So if they're paying $2,000 a month, you have to pretty much give them $2,000, and that's just within what is required. Why this is so important to follow, to make sure that there's no shadiness happening, because if it is reported that the person who bought the property did not move into it for at least 1 year and is trying to sell it early or just re-renting it out, there used to be a fine of $25,000, and I guess that was not deterring people enough from doing that, so they actually just increased it to $50,000. So now if you either sell a property and the buyers move in and then they end up selling it early, or they've never moved in, then the buyer ends up facing that $50,000 fine. So that's something that if you're buying a property, you want to make sure that you're not just falsely signing a declaration, because it could come back and cost you a lot of money. So you've sold the property, you have signed all of the notices that's required, you filed it, you've given the proper notice to the tenants that have been there. This fourth part is just about monitoring the situation. You want to stay in contact with the tenant to make sure that they're finding a place, that everything is going smoothly, so that you're not blindsided last minute where the tenant is still there and they show no signs of moving, because now you pretty much are not able to close. So you have to extend the closing, ask for a delay, an amendment in the agreement of purchase and sale, and it's not always that easy where the buyers could agree to that. So you want to make sure that you have everything in order before that closing date, so that there's absolutely no surprises. And typically, if let's just say you're selling a property now, give 60 days notice, but perhaps don't close until the 70th day. So instead of having the tenant leave on December 31st, have the tenant leaving on December 31st, but have the closing maybe January 7th or something, where you have a little bit of a delay so that there's no last minute scrambling. That's what you want to eliminate the absolute most. The fifth part is just pretty much practical advice. So like I said earlier, mutual agreement is the best way to go. You're going to cooperate with the tenant, they're going to cooperate with you, you help them find a new place, you act as a reference, you do everything in your power to help them find a new place. That way you're able to sell the place that is completely empty. The second option is cash for keys, and it's hard to do when you're selling a property, especially if you don't have a good relationship with the tenant that is living there. Pretty much you give them money to leave, and it's either, it depends, like every arrangement is completely different. Every time frame is completely different. So some people have given a higher lump sum with a very short move out day, or they give something a little bit more reasonable on the low side, but then they'll give 60 days notice for that tenant to be able to find something. So it's always easier to get the vacant possession before you're actually listing it. And even if it costs you a little bit of money to do that, it will help you when you sell your place, because the person buying it most likely wants to put in their own tenants, or they want to live in it. And they don't want any hassles or headaches that they can go through by getting that vacant possession. One thing to note too is if you're doing the cash for keys, you want to do an N11, and what that does is it pretty much it's a termination to the lease, and then you want to do an addendum as well. And what that addendum does is it puts in the terms and conditions. So if you are agreeing to pay $5,000 and the tenant is to leave within 60 days, you have that as an addendum on the last page. Here's an example of what the N11 looks like along with an addendum, just to give you an idea of the proper form you're going to want to be filled out with actually doing the cash for keys. Now, my story that I have to share has to do with me listing a property, having it sold within a couple of days, full price, and it was a duplex, so has a tenant upstairs, tenant downstairs. And in the past, I have never followed this exact process, and I would just trust the seller with their relationship with the tenant to handle it their own way. And so in this case, the landlord gave notice via text message to the downstairs, so the basement tenant, along with the main floor, second floor tenant. And within the 45 days or so, the basement tenant had moved out, fully cooperative. The seller had actually helped that tenant by finding a new place, everything like that. The upstairs tenant pretty much just went quiet, stopped cooperating. It wasn't until about 15 days into our firm agreement of purchase and sale that we figured out that this tenant was not leaving. And so in that case, we involved a paralegal. The proper notice was given. We asked for an extension from the buyer. The buyer agreed to an extension, but then wanted compensation every month that the tenant was going to be there and that we weren't able to close. So the seller did not want to give any compensation, and the lawyer also instructed that if the buyer wants to buy the property, then they're going to want to cooperate with us and be able to provide vacant possession. Because it was an investment property, the buyer was not willing to sign a declaration stating that they were going to move into the property, meaning the whole eviction via being sold and a buyer moving into it wasn't able to happen. So then our last resort was cash for keys, or just having the tenant leave by helping him. And he ended up not moving out on the day of closing. He didn't move out until about 7 days after, and he just left on his own, but he delayed the closing. And luckily the buyers were still interested in the property to be able to close on it, but it just created a big headache where if we had just followed the exact process right from the start, this all would have been avoided. One thing to note too with the cash for keys that I did not mention earlier, and again, I am not a paralegal or a lawyer, was if they actually sign the N11 and the declaration, you can go to Landlord Tenant Board and register that, and pretty much you get an eviction order the next day. So if you have 30 days where the tenant has to leave because you're giving him money to leave or her to leave, then on the 31st day, you can go and pretty much get an eviction order, go to the sheriff, and then that tenant has to leave. So that's one important part about the cash for keys, and you want to do it properly, because if it's not done properly, there's no guarantee that the tenant is actually going to leave, and there's no repercussion that can happen without you having to go through the process again. Typically, you don't want to give any cash for keys until the tenant has officially moved out. So whether you give it to a lawyer and the lawyer can give it to him upon moving out, or you just pretty much give a bank draft at the same time that they are giving you the keys. Well, that was the video. I hope you enjoyed it. It was something that I feel was very important for you to understand if you are selling your property that is tenanted, because if you don't do it properly, you're just setting yourself up for headaches. And when you're selling a property, it's stressful enough as it is, and having to go through tenant issues at the same time, it just makes it so much more stressful. So if you're able to avoid that, that's the best way that you can do it. And I just hope that you get value from the video. If you did, be sure to like it. It lets me know people are appreciating what I'm putting out there. But then it also helps YouTube knowing people are liking the videos. If you have your own experiences, drop it in the comments below, whether you were a landlord that was trying to sell a property, or you were a tenant who was trying to be evicted from a property and it wasn't being done properly. I love to hear other people's stories, but then it also helps others who are reading through the comments. So be sure to drop the comments in below. I have people reaching out from all over the world who are looking to pretty much buy, sell, invest here in the Greater Toronto area, and I absolutely love it. So if you're looking to move to or from the Greater Toronto area, be sure to call, text, email, send the carrier pigeon, whatever is easiest for you, and I'm here to make your move and relocation so much easier. Be sure to check out my channel, which has a whole bunch of other videos that are on there, which can really help whether you are looking just to become more familiar with the Greater Toronto area, specifically focused on Toronto, Pickering, Ajax, Whitby, Oshawa. Also, I have opportunities where I go live quite a bit, and I have different people on that help with provide information to those who are looking for it. Shoot me an email if you need contacts for people. So if you're looking to move to a different area and you're looking for a realtor, I have a huge network of people that I've worked with in the past that I can ensure you're going to be taken care of. But then also if you're looking for mortgage brokers or insurance brokers or pretty much anything real estate related, be sure to drop me an email and I'll do my best on helping to make everything go easy. Thanks for watching, and until next time.